So today I want to show you 5 different levels of blues playing. We're going to start with the most basic, just 3 chords and 12 bars, and we're going to go all the way up to Charlie Parker's Bird Blues. Who doesn't love to play the blues? For many of us, when we were just getting started, the blues was one of the first things that we learned how to play. And if you're just getting started now, the blues is definitely where I would recommend that you get started. And just because the blues is approachable doesn't mean it's not something we're going to use forever. The blues is the foundation for so many things that we're going to build on top of. So the blues is kind of 2 different things. It's a genre of music, which you might think like B.B. King or Eric Clapton or John Mayer, who are great blues guitar players. But the blues is also a form of standardized chords and timing, and we repeat that form when we create our song. And this blues form is definitely used in the genre of playing the blues, but it's so much bigger than that. If you listen to jazz players like Oscar Peterson, or we talked about blues players, B.B. King, Eric Clapton, John Mayer, or if you're playing New Orleans style piano music, you might be talking like James Booker, Professor Longhair, Dr. John, rock and roll players like Led Zeppelin, even underground punk rock bands like Green Day use the 12-bar blues form. So let's take a deeper look at how the form is constructed, and then we're going to listen to Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry, and we're going to see if we can recognize this form in the song. So the 12 bars that we use are a standardized formula, and it uses 3 chords. It uses the 1 chord, it uses the 4 chord, and it uses the 5 chord. We're going to talk everything in the key of C today. So the 1 chord would be C major, the 4 chord would be F major, the 5 chord would be G major. And for the blues, we're going to think about all of those as dominant 7 chords. So here we go. The first 4 measures of our blues form are the 1 chord. Bars 5 and 6 are going to be the 4 chord, and then we go back to the 1 chord for 2 more bars. And then for our last 4 bars, we have 1 bar of 5, 1 bar of 4, and then 2 bars of 1. All right, let's check out Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry. We all know it. This is a classic rock and roll song that uses the 12-bar blues form. See if you can recognize the chord change.
Oh, deep down in Louisiana, close to New Orleans, way back up in the woods among the evergreens, there stood a log cabin made of earth and wood, where lived a country boy named Johnny Be Good, who never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could play a guitar just like a ringing a bell. Oh, no.
Do it again. You may not be ready for this, but your kids are going to love it. Level 2 is what I call the upgraded blues progression. So the first thing we're going to do is what's called a fast 4. In the first 4 measures, we just playing the 1 chord the whole time. It's a long time to sit on 1 chord. So we're going to swap out the second bar for a 4 chord, and then we're going to come back to 1. The other thing we're going to do is change up the other chords here at the end a little bit to introduce a secondary dominant. This is just a 2 major chord in our key of C. That's a D major chord. D major doesn't belong to the key of C, so it gives us a little bit of like leaving the key and coming back a little bit. But D is also the 5 of the 5. We call this a secondary dominant. It's just a cool way to kind of wrap us back around to the 1 chord. So here's what this upgraded blues sounds like. So Count Basie, who was a great jazz piano player, but was kind of better known as a big band leader, I'm trying to say that 5 times fast, he added his own alteration to the 12-bar blues that kind of became standard jazz repertoire. And that was, every time we play a 4 chord, he would add a sharp 4 diminished chord after it. That diminished chord is unresolved. Like once you play it, you feel like you've got to keep moving. So it's a great way to just kind of add some motion and momentum to the blues. But the other thing about this sharp 4 diminished chord is that it adds a flat 3 and a sharp 4 to the chords. Both of those are really bluesy notes that we would use when we were soloing over top of it. So this chord fits pretty naturally into the progression. All right, let's see what that sounds like with that added diminished chord. So hold on tight because level 4 starts to get a little bit difficult. This is what we call the bebop blues. Bebop players love to play the blues, but the genre of bebop is defined by having these fast-moving chord changes, oftentimes 2 chords for every bar, and our blues so far hasn't been that way. We've been playing the same chords for 2 bars at a time, or in the basic form, 4 bars at a time. And in fact, if you count the last 2 measures of the form, and then you think about the loop back to the top, we're actually playing the one chord 6 bars in a row. Bebop players are not going to have that. They're going to want to change chords every 2 beats. Bebop players kind of all have their own flavor and their own ideas for how to do this, but there are some standardized ideas. The first one is that they just insert 2 5s everywhere. So for example, in our 4th measure, which is a 1 chord, and we're heading to the 4 chord next, we might change out that chord to be a 2 5 into the 4. And they do this all through the changes. Wherever there's kind of a key chord that we need to land on, they're going to insert a 2 5 in front of it. I've also heard a lot of players take that sharp 4 diminished, and instead of playing a fully diminished chord, they make it a half diminished chord, and that can act as a minor 2 5. Another thing I hear quite a lot in bars 7 and 8 is they'll take a dominant 7th chord shape and they'll just walk it down chromatically. That just leads your ear into the next chord. And then in the last 4 bars, they'll make a more extensive turnaround. I often hear a 2 5 at the beginning that then goes into an extended 3 6 2 5 turnaround at the end. So let's see what level 4 sounds like. I'm going to play it at a slower tempo than you would normally hear because I want you to be able to follow along and hear these changes. But I would encourage you to check out some classic recordings from these bebop masters. These changes go by so fast and they are so precise. It's really remarkable. All right, here's the one we've all been waiting for. It's level 5. It's Charlie Parker's famous Bird Blues progression. One really important change that Bird made was that he changed the 1 chord from a dominant 7th chord into a major 7 chord. And just like we did in level 4, Bird is going to use 2 5s to take us to the important chords in the progression. But he takes it even a step further than that. Instead of aiming for the fundamental blues chords, he's going to substitute those chords for tritone substitutions, and he's going to use the 2 5 that belongs to the substitution. And that gives us some really interesting chromatic 2 5 movement that we haven't heard yet. So if you haven't played a lot of bebop, those first 8 measures of the 12-bar blues can feel a bit weird, a bit wild. But the last 4 bars aren't doing much more than just a pretty standard turnaround, very similar to what we heard in level 4. I'm going to play through the Bird Blues for you, and just like I did a minute ago, I'm going to go a little bit slower just to make it easier to follow along with the changes. So now that we're down with how the 12-bar blues form works, we need to know what to do with it. So I've made a whole video here about how to solo over top of it. I'll see you there.